when you guys look at this map, tell me what you see. You see a city, Laodicea, and you see a city, Hierapolis, and you see a city, Colossae. Laodicea is known for being lukewarm. Hierapolis was known for having hot springs. Colossae was known for having cold springs. This is the meaning of the references to hot, cold, and lukewarm in the letter to the church of the Laodiceans. It is obviously a reference to water because Jesus is spewing lukewarm water out of his mouth. So we go back to the geography of the city, and we learned that there was a tri-city area in a river valley, all of them having access to the river. Hierapolis also had hot springs, and Colossae also had cold springs. Laodicea was an extraordinarily rich metropolis. So essentially what they did, rather than having their own people go to the river that was closer to them than either Hierapolis or Colossae, meaning the river was an immediately available resource to them. It was further away. The river was further away to Hierapolis and further away to Colossae. Laodicea would have had minimal effort to go procure this themselves. But instead of getting ordinary stuff, what do people with money do? Is they go to the convenience factor, or they go to the high end because they can afford it, right? So instead of going right to the river to get it and then heat it or cool it as necessary, they're like, oh no, let's pay to build these aqueduct systems from these cities that are miles away, about 6 miles in Hierapolis' case and about 10 miles in Colossae's case. So we'll use our money to build these aqueducts so that instead of having to put forth effort with river water to make it how we want, we can just bring hot water directly to us. And we can just bring cold water directly to us. Instead of having to put forth the effort, we'll just take from someone else what is theirs, and we'll pay for that convenience by building this huge aqueduct system. And yet that didn't work, because by the time it got to them, it wasn't hot, it wasn't cold, it was lukewarm. So the effect of them shelling out this large amount of money to make procuring from the source, things directly from the source, hot water from the source, cold water from the source, wound up being pointless because it wasn't that, the end product that they received wasn't what they were paying for. When they could have saved themselves all that money and just sent people to get the water themselves. This is what we tend to do when we can afford it. Instead of going directly to the restaurant and eating hot food being brought to the table, we will pay for somebody to deliver it to us. It's not as hot as it could be, but it's satisfactory, and we save ourselves the time. This is a trade-off that people with wealth typically make, is they will pay for convenience, and in most cases they will overpay or see it as some kind of rite of passage to overpay because they can. They will spend money unnecessarily just to make things easier for themselves. That is specifically what we see Laodicea doing. It's not that they were without water. It's that they were paying for convenience to have someone else bring it right to them in the manner that they wanted it. You want hot water? I'm not going to put forth the effort to go heat it. Just bring me hot water. Cold water. I'm not going to go through the effort to cool it. Just bring me cold water. So they built these really expensive aqueduct systems to bring in those things rather than do it themselves. And yet, as we see from this picture, the river was closest to them. Closer to them than it was to Colossae, and closer to them than it was to Hierapolis. I'm going to guess that Hierapolis was more than happy to take the money from Laodicea to build the system and to deliver them an inferior product, because, hey, what do they care? Colossae the same way. Laodicea is just going to be throwing their money around? Sure, we'll give them what they want. If it's not that way when they get it, we still got paid. We still held up our end. The original thought that I had when I was going into writing this was that Laodicea was without their own water source. That is not true. They were just so rich that they paid other people to do their work for them, and then wound up with something that wasn't what they wanted as a result, instead of just going to get it themselves. This is the whole living water conversation that is very directly tied to the foolish virgins conversation. They didn't have what they needed, oil, and they were trying to get it from someone else, and those people said, no, lest we not have enough for ourselves, go and buy it. Go get what you need from someone else rather than directly from the source. Who's the only one that can give oil? Only one who can give the Spirit, Jesus. In this conversation with Laodicea, they were trying to procure a source other than directly from, they were trying to procure water from another place, another people, rather than going directly to the river source to get it themselves. In the context of living water, you can't go get living water from an ordinary well or a hot springs or a cold springs. You have to get it directly from Jesus himself. The spiritual connotation is you cannot get what you need for salvation from anyone other than Christ. Oil in the lamp, the Spirit, you got to get it from him as a result of being saved by grace through faith, and then you get the Spirit as a down payment toward on the new covenant relationship. It's the gifts portion. It's a down payment on your eternal inheritance, which you begin to receive at the point of glorification. And living water is a restitution. It's essentially the restitution of all things, is the living water that began in creation, the curse of the earth, and the restoration of the broken relationship between God and the first Adam is restored through us with the second Adam. He came to give back living water. John 4. You can't get living water from an ordinary well. You have to go directly to him. You can't pay for it. You can't throw your money around and expect other people to just deliver it to you. You have to go to him to get it. So this is kind of a neat little twist on this, is when you look at an actual geographic map of the city, you come to learn very quickly that they did have their own source. And they were just too lazy to go do it themselves, and they wanted other people to do it for them, and they had the money to throw around to make that happen. And yet clearly it didn't actually wind up working out for them, because what they got was not what they were paying for. And it had, in the spiritual context, no ability to save them. Read John 4. Jesus told the woman at the well, anyone who drinks from this well is going to thirst again. But anyone who drinks from the living water that I give them will never thirst again. So I just thought that was interesting. Thought I would point it out. This is a case of laziness. Sheer and simple. See you guys later.